Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very interesting live stream about a situation that we've been discussing for a while now, but now it looks like it might actually happen. And it's a big one. Thanks, Danny. Thanks for gifting that membership. It is the first live stream of the week, which means I too shall gift some memberships. Hold on. Here they come. Hold on. Wait a minute. There we go. Thank you, 80s model. Ta-da! Thank you, Rogue Frogger. Welcome back, Clapback Cinema. Michael! Yay! I'm glad you could not only make the live stream, but thank you for being so generous. So, this is a story-specific live stream, which means for the majority of the live stream, I'll keep an eye on your comments, but for the most part, the Q&A will be at the end. And I'm going to walk you through the copious amounts of things that we have to discuss. Michael, 5 more. That's really very kind of you. Thank you so much. I'm glad this stream is a little earlier than usual, so hello to those of you who sometimes can't otherwise join. It's also a holiday here in the United States, Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. They were supposed to have a Columbus Day parade today, but it got canceled because of the weather. Hey, Steve, thank you so much. I'm going to address, potential other buyers. H. Hadley was like, oh, please, could someone else be able to maybe swoop in? And we're going to discuss that. Thank you, Jesse. All right, so let's get started. All right, boopity boop boop, baby. All right, so we're going to start our conversation here about Hollywood consolidation. So I want to show you the size of the companies. That's right, Ryan. Hollywood business class in session. This is from actually a couple of years ago, this chart. This is from 2022, but I looked it up, and it's relatively accurate to today. Everybody's a little bit bigger than they were here, but the sizes are basically the same. So tech companies are really hurting the Hollywood landscape because they're just so much bigger. As you can see, Apple and Amazon just dwarf everybody else. And the only reason that Disney is now bigger than Netflix is because they purchased Fox. And we're gonna talk about all that. But Disney really kind of got into this situation because of Netflix. Netflix was the first, so I gotta make sure the arrow's in the right place. So Netflix was the first official tech entertainment company. Apple started out just selling products, right? And they got into the music space before they did, movies and TV. And Amazon used to just be the Sears of the internet. A long time ago, back in the day, there was something called the Sears catalog, which you could get absolutely anything out of, including a house that you could build yourself back in the day. And Amazon took basically the idea of the Sears catalog and brought it to the internet. So it's not even a new idea. But unfortunately, Sears didn't think of it. Sears instead eventually became a department store that I believe is now out of business. So Netflix was the first tech entertainment company, and it was so big that it quickly dwarfed all the other studios. And not only were the studios worried about being able to compete, they were like, why does Netflix have so much more money than us? How can we get that amount of money? Now, one thing is that you have to realize that this is largely all because of Wall Street. These are all publicly traded companies, and they have to answer to their shareholders. And not only are their shareholders going to say, why aren't you making as much money for us as these other companies? But, you don't want your shareholders to sell your shares and then instead go buy Amazon and Apple shares. People only buy shares, not to own there are some people who buy it from like a fan perspective, but people buy shares to make money. And so they don't even care about what the share is that they're actually buying, to be honest with you. They're like, what is its performance and what is the rate of return? So, the CEOs have a tremendous obligation to Wall Street and the shareholders that is more important to them than the consumer and the employee, which I feel is a real problem. But it's the world that we live in. So these companies couldn't stay small. Disney can't stay small. None of these studios could stay small because they are in the same space as Netflix. So that creates a real problem for them. Wall Street is what's really forcing consolidation because the analysts at the banks don't care about the quality of your movies or the legacy of your studio. They want to know what your bottom line is and if you're scaling. That's why I've put scale there. What's the scale of your company? Is there growth? Thank you, Loy. And that's all really important. And that's what happens when you take your company public, which is, I guess, one of the reasons that Jared Kushner and the Saudis are trying to take Electronic Arts private. That makes you less answerable to your, not at all answerable to Wall Street and your shareholders. Inconsolable points out that infinite growth is unsustainable, but I think you always have to be showing progress and strength. You see the investor reports every quarter, right? Although Donald Trump is trying to make it that you no longer have to do a quarterly report, which I think is not great. But yeah, they want to know, they want to see if the company's being run well and if it's performing as it should, because that was what they base their stock purchases on. And a lot of people base their stock purchases on evaluations by the banks, and banks make their evaluations, and the finance media makes their evaluations based on these quarterly reports. So Disney, Bob Iger, as I said yesterday on Movie Math, Bob Iger even started to do mass consolidation when he bought Pixar, when he bought Marvel, when he bought Star Wars. These all used to be individual entities, and he wanted them all under the Disney umbrella. It's actually pretty smart because he said that he was at the Disney theme park and he noticed, hey Lloyd, he noticed that the most popular characters to the fans were the ones they didn't own, that they were only leasing. That's why he bought Pixar. As for Marvel and Lucasfilm, he bought those products, those companies, because Disney had a real boy problem. They couldn't get young boys and adult men interested. They were very popular with little girls, families, and women. And so they were like, let's get Marvel and Star Wars. And it was a very good idea until their creatives decided to how can we make Marvel and Star Wars for women? And that was like weird because that was the whole point as to why Disney acquired those companies. So yes, but then Disney ultimately bought Fox. And that was so they could do a streaming service. They really wanted to dive into Disney Plus to compete with Netflix. They really want the, that's very sweet, Nicole. They really want, they bought Fox, for the parts, and they've actually done pretty good with some of the IP that they got in the deal, but that's not why Disney made the deal. They did it to scale. Thank you, Ramanzilla. They did it to scale up. And they scaled up so well that, you've seen the box office for the last few years. Disney dominates. I mean, this year Warner Brothers is dominating, but the year ain't over yet. And people kind of feel like, Disney probably will come out from behind. But, for the most part, Disney has dominated for a very long time. And all these other studios now, it used to be we have to compete with Netflix. Now, basically, you see all these other studios saying we must get to the size of Disney because otherwise we simply can't compete. So Netflix and Disney are the ones who are kind of like the pace bunnies right now in the space. So Sherry Redstone wanted to cash out. Sherry Redstone was like, her dad, her papa, a lot of dads, a lot of nepotism in all businesses, obviously. Thanks, Andrew. She really wanted to sell Paramount for a very long time. And she had to wrestle the company out of her dad's hands. I think she actually ended up wrestling it out of her dad's dead hands. I think he finally passed away, or was very close to death's door. So she finally got it, and she really wanted to sell it. She really aggressively wanted to sell it. She stripped off the name Viacom to make it more, brand aware. And she did. She sold it to the Ellisons. Okay, so the Ellisons have tremendous wealth. Larry Ellison, the father, who is the owner and co-founder of Oracle, the tech company that no one has heard of, but apparently everybody uses, bought it for his son, David Ellison, who's run Skydance, a production finance company for many, many years. They largely are behind the Mission Impossible movies. Their slate's only okay, but they have a lot of money to throw around. So they bought it. It took a while for the deal to come together, but it helps that the Ellisons, particularly Larry, is conservative and has a friendly relationship with the Trump administration. So one of the ways they got that to go through is that they made some promises that they would move CBS News to be more center-right, to be like Fox News Light. And the Trump administration, as you can imagine, really liked that idea, and that's one of the main reasons that they approved this merger. However, while Paramount has tremendous structure, so let's take a look at them on this map, right? So let me get my arrow. All right? So Paramount is actually smaller than Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers has tremendous debt. But here's Paramount. Where's Paramount? Right there. Oh, it's tiny. It's very tiny. It's worth about 16, it says here. I looked it up. It's actually worth about 18 billion today. So just a couple billion more. So there it is. Oh, it's a little tiny. It's like a moon for Disney. A moon. We need planets here. We need planets. And then there's Warner Brothers here at 34, probably now worth a little bit more than that. So you're like, how can we smush these two together, man? We still probably wouldn't be the size of these two, but we'd be getting closer. All right, so they really need IP. Let's talk about that. Let's take a look at the IP. So you can see the Paramount is pretty IP poor. They have some nice IP. They've been getting some more. I didn't even put South Park on here. They spent a lot for South Park and the UFC. But they do not have a lot of IP. Warner Brothers is IP rich. They have a lot of not only great brands, but sterling brands. It's one of the reasons that people always say that Warner Brothers is the true competitor of Disney, even though Universal actually usually ends up being the one to truly challenge them, except for this year. But Warner Brothers has tremendous IP. And recently they asked David Ellison at a conference he was giving about all this. They were like, hey, buddy, how do you feel about, are you buying Warner Brothers? And what he said, that's right, I forgot to mention Game of Thrones on there. That's also very big. But David Ellison said something very interesting, besides that he wouldn't comment on whether or not they were going to make an offer. Although it was revealed over the weekend they've made an opening offer, which we'll discuss in a moment. But David Ellison said that Zaslav is in fact the one who has been really preaching the importance of consolidation. So he knows that Warner Brothers wants to sell. And then Ellison also said that he believes the name of the game these days is IP. That you just need constant IP to keep up engagement. That's a little bit scary. Netflix is very IP rich with their originals at this point. Although we often complain that, Netflix doesn't advertise any of their product. You're like, oh, did that come out? And maybe you should have advertised it. They advertise a few things. But look at K-pop Demon Hunters. Thank goodness that blew up on its own because, out of the gate, Netflix did absolutely nothing to advertise that. So David Ellison said what he was really going for is he wants massive amounts of IP so he can generate tons of content to make sure that you stay on his services. That's basically what he's saying. I want to keep you seeing my movies, being on my streaming service, et cetera, et cetera. And the only way I can do that is with just tons of IP, which is really the way that Disney has been operating. Disney has just tons of IP. So it was revealed over the weekend that the Ellisons have in fact already written Zazie an offer. They were like, we'll give you, I think, $20 a share. Which is, I believe higher than what they're trading at. But Zazie said no. He said no. I love this picture of Zazie, by the way. For those of you who don't know, Zazie always has these sunglasses on and his swagger when he goes to this conference. This is like a CEO conference, like they always show in Succession. If you ever watch the HBO show Succession, they would occasionally go to this conference up in Colorado or something, and they'd have to fly in on jets, and they are all business casual. And that's where Bob Iger gave that infamous interview where he was like, they have to have realistic expectations during the strike. And everyone was like, Bob! But anyway, that's where Zazie always is, where he takes these funny photos. He's really funny. Always putting on the shades. He's popping the collar. He's pointing at the press. So I just think it's very funny, very funny. So Zazie said, I don't know, no way. Although I think the Ellisons could have offered any amount of money and Zazie would have said no, because you don't take the first offer. I mean, that's negotiating 101. Zita says, with how poorly a lot of these shows, movies have charted, do we really think IP is as valuable as it was 5 years ago? Sure do. IP is more valuable than ever. Originals really struggle, unfortunately. Occasionally you can hit pay dirt and you can have an original that connects, but it's very hard these days. So I do think that IP is extremely valuable. Extremely, 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 extremely valuable. So everybody feels that the Ellisons are going to come back with another offer. They will either offer another amount to Zazie, and I saw a number of coverage this morning, and the speculation is that if Zazie turns them down again, another offer that the Ellisons have, another thing the Ellisons have that they can do, thank you, Bubbles, what the Ellisons can also do is go directly to the shareholders. And they can say, Zazie won't accept our offer, but will you accept our offer? And then they can circumvent Zazie. Hey, Drago, but Zazie's known as a deal maker. It's his whole reason for existence. You know, as I said yesterday, and as many times before, the only reason Zazie even got Warner Brothers in the first place, where AT&T, by the way, remained a major shareholder, including John Stanky. Even individually, he will personally, and David Zaslav owns stock. These gentlemen will personally make millions and millions of dollars off of a merger. Zazie's sole purpose is to flip Warner Brothers, so he's not going to let them go around him. Zazie's not crazy. Again, Zazie's there to make a deal, so he will probably he'll know when he knows how far he can push the Ellisons. I mean, rumor has it that Zazie's slightly conservative as well. Why won't my turtleneck thing stay up? It bothers me to no end. But anyway, Zazie is slightly conservative as well, everybody feels. Now, I think that they want Warner Brothers sterling brands. Oh, Warner Brothers is particularly sparkly and beautiful. I recently said that when you log on to Paramount Plus, it feels like going into a junk drawer. And I stand by that comment. I love Landman. I'm so excited for Landman Season 2. I haven't started Amazing Race, the new season, actually. Maybe I should. But I feel like there's no organization. I feel like there's no personality. I think that of all the streaming services from the studios, Disney and Warner Brothers have the most personality when you log into their services. It's really nice. Apple kind of does too, 80s model. That's true. But, Paramount and Peacock, you're like, where? Well, I don't even know where to go in here. It's just, again, a junk drawer. And you sift through it for what you're looking for, and then you're like, whew, not going in there again until I need something else. So Warner Brothers has incredible, incredible, incredible brands. Like, my goodness. So I think that's making them very attractive. Then also, and it would allow Paramount to get into a couple of areas like, also I should have mentioned it, gaming. Warner Brothers gaming is a very big commodity that, that would allow, I'm sure that Paramount is interested in getting into the gaming space, particularly because Larry Ellison comes from the tech industry. But also I think they want CNN. I think they really want CNN. CNN, we're going to talk about Warner Brothers doing an upcoming split. I think that's why they're trying to swoop in here and buy Warner Brothers before the upcoming split, which is supposed to take place a little after we get into the new year. I think they want CNN. CNN's ratings are in the toilet, and so I think that they want to remake CNN as a light conservative network. Hopefully not although the person they hired to run CBS News is not promising. I think that they said they were going to go moderate, moderate conservative, but it doesn't seem to be the case. But I think they want CNN. CBS is certainly very nice. It's a network, but I think they want CNN. Then I think I'm very curious as to what could potentially happen to HBO. HBO, I don't understand what they're going to do with HBO. I mean, obviously HBO is an IP machine, and HBO, by the way, can find new IP and launch it successfully. But where the heck is HBO going to go? Is it going to remain its own streaming service, or are they going to make this a tab on Paramount Plus? I'm concerned. I mean, Hulu is going to become a tab on Disney Plus in the coming months, and I hate that. I still, to this day, watch Hulu on its own app, even though I could access those shows through Disney Plus. I'm like, no, I'm staying on the separate ones. I like my Disney Plus to be Disney, and I like my Hulu to be Hulu and very Foxy. I'm really not happy that they're going to get rid of that interface. So I'm like, where the heck is HBO going to go? Would HBO, instead of being a channel, would it just become a brand? Right? That's very scary to me. But I'm sure the Zazzies, the Zazzies, I'm sure the Ellisons, I'll have to come up with a nickname for them. I'm sure the Ellisons really want it. All right, so let's talk about Warner Brothers. All right, so Warner Brothers, Zaslav previously, he couldn't sell Warner Brothers up until now. He would have loved to have sold it. He's been able to sell it since last year. When he first did the merger between when he took Warner Brothers from AT&T and he merged Warner Brothers and Discovery, part of the deal that he made with the government was that he couldn't flip Warner Brothers for, I think, like 2 years or something. But sometime in 2024, I think it was actually April 2024, he had the go-ahead to sell. And he hasn't been able to. Nobody's coming in to buy this thing, and a large part because it has a lot of really old content, like, with all due respect to Discovery, who wants to buy, the TLC channel, right? And then also, again, the company is saddled with tremendous debt, which was part of the reason that AT&T could never do anything with Warner Brothers. They were like just drowning in debt. The debt of Warner Brothers, their own debt. So they were like, we gotta get out of here. So what Zazzy came up with was, he said, I'm gonna split them into two different companies. I'm going to put all the crap, including the debt, over here. And then I'm going to put all the stuff that anybody actually would want over here. And I'm going to try and sell this. And the idea is that this would be less money and less of a headache than having to buy all of it. And so he said that this split is going to happen, I think actually in April of 2026. And so the idea is that, the suitors would suddenly pop up as to where it's up until now no one's been interested. So let's talk about who could be the potential other suitors, because everybody's like, somebody else, please? Just so many people are just trying to get someone else to do this. Fans are like, for the love of God, what about Netflix? So let's talk about them, all right? So Amazon, a lot of people are saying that Amazon got burned badly on the MGM purchase. They paid tons of money for it. Didn't get that much. Also, he just paid Bezos $1 billion for James Bond. And look how, let's go back to this other chart. Look how freaking big Amazon is. He doesn't need to buy anything else. His company is huge. He already has scale. So I don't think that Amazon is going to be interested in that. Then as for Apple, Apple also already has tremendous scale, and they're solving their own problems. They're doing great in the television space. They were the first streaming company to win Best Picture as an Oscar, and I think to this day still the only one. And then also, they finally fixed their movie problem. A lot of their movies were losing tremendous amounts of cash at the box office. They were just total duds. But F1 really, I think, was the start of turning things around. F1 did extraordinarily well, and it'll probably pick up some Oscars in the tech categories, or at least some nominations. They're running a very aggressive awards campaign right now. So Apple doesn't need it. Now, what about Netflix, right? No, Roma didn't win, Faye. Roma was nominated, but I do not believe that it won. Because I remember when Coda won, it was the first. Roma was a very good movie, though. I liked Roma. All right, so anyway, Netflix. Maybe. Well, here's what happened. Somebody asked Netflix the other day, somebody very high up at the company, if they were potentially going to consider a bid on Warner Brothers, particularly when they split. Netflix said no. Netflix said, we have no interest in purchasing someone else. We like to grow things from the inside. And then also, what the heck would they even do with Warner Brothers, right? Netflix is one of the reasons that Netflix is so incredibly successful. I mean, Netflix just has so much money coming in, is because they do not really have any costs outside of making content and running streaming services. What are they going to want with all this, right? All they would want is the IP. And by the way, everybody now is more, for a while, everybody was like, give me back my content, Netflix. And that's why Netflix had to create originals in the first place, because they were making so much money that the other studios got jealous and started yanking their content away, and Netflix had nothing to stream. So they were like, well, we guess we better make our own content. And they never looked back. So now, though, because everybody's just trying to make money, they have some very lucrative deals with studios. Sony doesn't have their own streaming service, so their films, when they go to streaming, go to Netflix. Warner Brothers, down the line, now actually runs their films on Netflix as well, because Zazie loves a good deal. His own brand be damned. He doesn't care, He just wants the cash. And so Netflix is fine these days. And that's right, Danny. Netflix doesn't want to do theatrical releases. Does Netflix want to have a whole branch where they have to then do theatrical releases? Like, why do they need that headache? They release some of their films. They're doing more and more of that. They're starting to do 2 to 3 a week theatrical releases in very limited runs. But they don't need to buy Warner Brothers to do any of this. And they're already making tons of money. So they don't need it, right? So they're like, we're not probably going to buy it. What about Comcast Universal? Comcast Universal has always kind of been in the loop, and look how big they are. They're pretty big. They're already on their own about the size of Disney. Maybe that's why. Let's see. I can't be able to read this. 171 versus 173. So yes, when Disney bought Fox, they became about the same size as Comcast, which has NBC, Universal, their cable company, very, very successful company, and their theme parks, which often rival Disney. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of people want Comcast to buy Warner Brothers, to get this IP into their parks. And I don't blame you. That would be just wonderful. But, and I do have to say that if this were to get to the stage where they did do the split, maybe Comcast would make a bid. Comcast, they really, they don't need to buy it. As you can see, Warner Brothers also is expensive. It's more expensive than buying Paramount. In fact, the Ellisons are believed to not be able to make the purchase entirely on their own. They might have Apollo, and it's a different company, but Apollo was in the mix to potentially buy Paramount and lost out. They're like some kind of money fund or something. Apollo might join in and therefore become a part of this conglomerate anyway by putting up the cash to be able to get Warner Brothers into this. It's very expensive, and I just don't know if Comcast, needs to make the purchase. Although I will say that if this were to happen, if Warner Brothers and Paramount were to merge, you would have a third studio as big as Disney and Comcast, Universal, right? So I can kind of understand it from that perspective. Let me get rid of this split thing here. Let me go back to the consolidation chart. Yeah, that would create 3 companies, that were, and Sony's kind of that size too, thanks to, they're only at 106. And, Warner Brothers and Paramount together wouldn't even be still at 100 million, by the way. They'd still be slightly smaller, but they'd be getting close. They'd be getting very close. And then maybe they could have tremendous growth because the Ellisons are extremely aggressive. But yeah. So that's why you're seeing consolidation. It's all about Wall Street. It's all about scale. It's all about being able to compete in the marketplace. And that's what you're seeing. They're not going to be an Amazon or an Apple, but they'd be the size of Disney and Comcast and would be able to compete on that scale. All right, so let's talk about the question that everybody's wondering. What the heck is going to happen to James Gunn? I've seen a lot of speculation about this already. So I thought it would be an important thing to do to weigh in on that. J. Jonah Jameson, of course, says stocks are up. That's what everybody wants to see, who's driving this situation. They want that money. People are making money off even just the chatter. People are buying Warner Brothers stock right now because they know that it'll go up. If there's a buyout, you'll get more than your stock is worth to do the buyout. They're not going to spin off DC, Slade. It's one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable IP that Warner Brothers has to a degree, certainly in the public eye, although tremendous damage has been done to it. So I have my theories on James Gunn. So let's talk about the situation. All right, so the Peacemaker debacle, as I said on Movie Math yesterday, I'm sure he wishes, the timing on his Peacemaker debacle is really bad. Like that timing, it couldn't have come at a worse time. Right as the Ellisons are about to purchase the company. Here he is, left, holding the bag, not delivering on promises, and even his most ardent supporters, who have been his cheering squad, have turned on him a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't say they've totally turned on him, but he has, in the past, he's enjoyed tremendous support from a very vocal group, his core fans. And even they couldn't really support him on this. I saw a couple of people trying, which is, I'm glad he has that kind of fan base. But it's bad. It's really bad. However, I do want to say that I think the Superman box office will still save him. So let's take a look at the Superman box office. All right, so here's the worldwide top 10 so far. I will tell you, there's Superman. Let me get my little arrow. Boom, 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 boom. Where is it? Here we go. All right, so here's Superman at number 8. I do believe by the end of the year it'll be pushed off this chart, as will therefore Fantastic Four, and there will not be a single comic book movie on the chart. That is shocking, and one of the reasons that perhaps DC just overall won't be the brand that it once was. I think that Wicked, Avatar 3, and Zootopia will all be on the final 10 by the end of the year, and that means that Superman will get pushed down. So that's not great. But it's on here, and it's higher than any of the Marvel movies in its defense. That's pretty good. So it's at 615. That's where it ended up. It's overseas was really bad. This is a huge problem that the overseas is so weak. It should be in the 60th percentile, and instead it's 42. It's really bad. Jurassic has a healthy split. That's what it's supposed to look like. Jurassic World Rebirth, itself underperforming, by the way. But yeah, let's see. I gotta tell you, Obed, I don't know how good Zootopia 2 looks either. There's always the chance that Avatar and Zootopia don't perform, but I think they're gonna do better than 520 million. I think they might not be at the top of this list, but I think they're gonna be on the list. I do believe that all three will make this list, because it's not very competitive this year. All right, but what's really interesting, and what I think so I think that one thing that saves Gunn is that he did better than Marvel. That's really important. That's really, really important. Then let's take a look at the domestic top 10, where he looks even better, because Superman is in 3rd place. This movie made so much money domestically. As disappointing as its overseas box office is, its domestic box office is truly impressive. This reminds you that this is the guy who did the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. 354. That is incredible. He outgrossed Jurassic World domestically. And he really did substantially better than the Marvel movies, which are all down here. I mean, that is really strong. His domestic, you just can't deny that he delivered as best I think he could in the space. Oh wait, my arrow is not above. In the space that he's in right now. I think there are some instances or elements that are out of his control. So you just can't deny. Again, I don't think the Ellisons are DC fans. I don't think they're like, did I like the movie or not? The Ellisons only care about performance. Are you making me money? That's all any executive cares about, because again, they answer to Wall Street. So I think the Superman box office is going to help him. However, he has some other issues besides Peacemaker. Too many damn interviews. This guy will talk to anyone, and for a long period of time, and he will talk about anything. He's not keeping anything close to the vest. As I said, I think it makes his interviews less valuable. And the reason he talks so much is because he is the writer and director of all of the projects they're doing so far. So he's not only doing the DC Studios publicity, but he has to go out and publicize things as a director and a writer would do. So he has to do all those interviews. And I think it's intentional. Who should I hire for this? I think I should hire myself. Remember, he gets all those paychecks too. He's getting a salary to run DC, and I think he gets one bulk check for, he got paid $15 million for Superman. Although I just showed you some great box office. I'd be like, do I get a Peacemaker discount? Because, but it's like, and he does get a lot of headlines. Although I do think that because of the Peacemaker situation, I told you a long time ago not to believe what James Gunn says. And a lot of people got angry with me, and that's understandable. I understand. But I think that with this Peacemaker situation, people finally can see what I've always seen. And so I think that he's going to find that his interviews suddenly have a lot less pull because, you can't believe everything that he says. And I do feel that he legitimately felt that he was delivering with the Peacemaker finale. But that's because, again, I told you he's a back of the comic book store guy. He's too much of a fan. He has no perspective. So that's another problem. I think that he's making stuff for the hardcore fans, which to some degree is great, but he has absolutely no ability to understand the casual audience, which is a big problem. All right, so the interviews are a problem, and it's because he's not hiring. I mean, if he had other writers and directors, this wouldn't be as big of an issue. Also, it would not hurt for him to occasionally say, no comment, or I can't talk about that right now. But I'll tell you, in or out, I would not get rid of James Gunn. I wouldn't do it. I think DC has had too much turnover. I think they just can't have another situation like that. I think that for better or worse, he is a hardcore DC fan, and I think he does have some good instincts. I think that Superman was quite good, and I think that it would be, I still think the brand could take another stripping down and starting from square one. All right? Also, they're not going to get rid of everybody. Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdy just re-signed their contracts to keep running the film division. So, they want to have some kind of, continuity between going from being independent to being owned by Paramount. So I think that, and James Gunn also, I have to say, still gets a lot of headlines. He does get clicks. He is a celebrity, right? So, that's beneficial. And he hasn't fought with the studio. Zack Snyder became a celebrity as well, but Zack Snyder was fighting with the people who employed him, or he needed to employ him. And that was a big problem. You want to make sure that the people who are going to sign your paycheck are your friends, because then they don't want to sign your paycheck anymore, particularly the Ellisons. And the fact that, I want to tell you, I think that one of the reasons that James Gunn got the job running DC, not only because he was, Zazzy really wanted to poach somebody from Marvel. He, in fact, his first choice was Kevin Feige, and he couldn't get him. And, many people have been saying for a long time that James Gunn was, being groomed to be Feige's successor. So I think Zaslav, to a degree, felt that he was getting Kevin Feige's successor. But, he is in many ways, and that's why Warner Brothers DC is finding itself with a lot of the same problems that Marvel is having an issue with. But I think that James Gunn got this job because I think he gets along with David Zaslav. And I think there's a chance that he might get along with the Ellisons, I mean, I think that, you're talking about at least somewhat conservative tech bros. I mean, can you think of somebody who would get along better with James Gunn? I can't. I think it's a good personality fit. So I don't think he'll be gotten rid of. However, this is what I would do, all right? I don't think he should be in charge of DC Studios. Certainly not. It's tough. You don't want to demote him because, maybe he would decide he didn't want to stick around, all right? But I'd be like, you really going to turn down all my money? But I think there needs to be an executive above him and Peter Safran. So a lot of people are like, what about Peter Safran? Doesn't he run this? I mean, that's a great question. But here's another thing. I don't think Peter Safran would have the job that he has if it wasn't for James Gunn. He produced a number of James Gunn's films, particularly his DC ones. So I don't think that Peter Safran, I think he's too close to James Gunn. I think he's James Gunn's, I don't think they're equals in terms of the power that they wield at DC. I believe that it's like the Bob Chapek, Bob Iger situation, how that was supposed to work. Peter Safran's supposed to do all the stuff that James Gunn doesn't want to do, right? The executive stuff. And I don't think he's actually overseeing James Gunn. I think he's like, I think you're great, man. I think apparently he makes suggestions every once in a while, but it's up to James Gunn whether or not to take them, which is crazy. What kind of a partnership is that? I'll tell you what it is. It's not a partnership. So James Gunn is in charge, and I think that Peter Safran is getting paid a lot of money to kind of do again the things that James Gunn doesn't want to do. So you need an executive that's going to be above both of them. I wouldn't fire either one of them, but I'd be like, you guys need supervision. And that would be the individual who would do interviews talking about DC overall, right? James Gunn is too strong of a creative. He can't be asked to approve his own projects. James Gunn is always going to approve his own project because of course he thinks it's a great idea. He thought of it. And you know what? That's understandable. You can't fault the guy, right? Of course he would greenlight everything he thought of because he thinks it's a fabulous idea. You need someone who isn't friends with either of them, who's loyal to the Ellisons, and who will do what's best for the brand and for the company. And will say to James Gunn sometimes, no. And I think James Gunn has tremendous value creatively, and I also think James Gunn is pretty good at casting. I think so far his casting has been very good. I mean, I hope he doesn't upset me with whatever happens with Batman, but I think James Gunn does a good job with casting. And I think he has good instincts for the most part with the creative aspects, but I think he is very bad at getting broad appeal, and I think that I don't think he's a good business person. And that's what brings me to my final point. Oh, that's right, Denzel, I said that yesterday. Peacemaker Season 2 should never have been greenlit because the first one didn't perform well enough. There shouldn't be making a second Creature Commandos. Creature Commandos should never have been made. These are all like vanity things. These are projects that appeal to James Gunn and his hardcore fans. They're not building blocks for an aggressive studio, And by the way, I think Marvel's making a lot of the same problems right now. I think there's a lot of shows that Marvel is advertising right now. You're like, who greenlit this? This is not a show that you should be making. It's a waste of the spot that you have in your slate. So yeah, I'm glad some of you do like Creature Commandos. I thought it had its good moments, but it just is, it's not a building block. It certainly shouldn't have been the first building block out of the gate. All right, so yes, a creative versus an executive. I've said this before. Kevin Feige, by the way, is not a creative. Kevin Feige is a business person, right? And even he's struggling right now. It's hard. It's difficult. I'm excited about what they've done with James Bond over at Amazon. I think that Amy Pascal and David Heyman running the Bond franchise is a great idea. And they picked producers. That's who you have to pick. James Gunn is, his heart just isn't in it. It's the same reason that Dave Filoni will never run Star Wars and why Jon Favreau doesn't want the job. These are people who want to be in the field. They want to be making and telling stories. And that's great. All those people are very important to their brands. And that's what I would say to James Gunn. I would say you're very important as a creative to the DC brand, but you shouldn't be running it. You're just not, a creative. So for those of you who don't know the lingo in Hollywood, I'm sorry, I should have filled you in on that. A creative it doesn't mean you don't have ideas, but a creative is somebody who has a creative job on a project. A creative is the director, the writer. That's what creatives are. Anybody else on a project. A producer is not a creative. Now, the best executives and producers have creative abilities. But yes, that's right, Ben. They don't direct, they don't write. They oversee. And because they have that distance and perspective, they can oversee they can oversee the whole enchilada because they see everything. And, they have that distance to be able to have perspective. And that's what it is. So it's a really important job. Again, I'm begging you, watch The Offer on Paramount Plus, by the way. Maybe if it was better organized, people would have seen it. But that's The Godfather, one of the greatest movies of all time. And if you watch how it was made, you'll see the importance of every single person at every level who worked on that film. From the people that owned Paramount to Paramount's film leadership to the producer. I mean, it's just you can't get a better lesson in how things are supposed to be structured at any kind of a creative place. And, Lloyd says that Gunn has a tonal issue. Well, I think when he's not supervised, he does. I've said this before. Don't give James Gunn an R rating. He can't handle it. But I think when you put him in the confines of a PG-13 rating, he's golden. I've enjoyed his last 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I enjoyed Superman, but I think when you give him an R, the guy just goes out the window in terms of his taste. So and you need someone. Peter Safran's clearly not going to say that to him. So yeah, that's what I would do. I wouldn't get rid of James Gunn. He needs oversight, and he shouldn't be in charge of DC. He should be probably one of the top creatives. You know what I would say? He probably should have the same job at DC as he did at Marvel, where he clearly was a little bit above, although hey, X-Men superfan, welcome back. I think he recommended Peyton Reed to direct Ant-Man and be like, no, what did you do that for? But I think and maybe that's one of the reasons that's fascinating. James Gunn, before he left Marvel, was recommending a lot of talent, right? And a lot of that recent talent has really led Marvel down the wrong path, a path that oddly DC is now going on. And that's really interesting. I do wonder if there's a correlation there. That's crazy. No, I don't think that he's poisoning the competition. I think that he honestly believes these are great recommendations, right? That's really amazing. Because remember, in the early days of Marvel, they were hiring more professional people, right? People who were more established. But then when Gunn came in, they started taking risks on quirkier, lower down people. Oh, thanks again, X-Men superfan. That's amazing. I never thought of that. That is really, really interesting. So yes, you need an executive to come in and say no. No, 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 no. You need someone to come in and say no and to say yes. But that's really fascinating. I do wonder if that's the issue. That's really, really amazing. All right. So that's my thoughts. I wouldn't get rid of James Gunn, but I don't think he should be totally in charge of DC. I'd give him total control over Superman. I would. Excuse me. My giant iced tea. All right. But yes, I would. I just think he should be. I think he should be a creative pillar at DC, but I don't think he should run DC. That's what I think, and I'm excited to see his next Superman movie. I am still. Peacemaker was bad. Every time you feel James Gunn has taken a couple of steps forward, then he takes a lot of steps back, and you're like, oh no, it is as bad as I thought. Yeah, Mexican 8 Nacho. I don't know why we're not getting... I mean, I don't know. They're like, would you like to see a team up of Superman and Lex Luthor? And you're like, no. I mean, I kind of would, actually. I kind of would. All right, so let's do the Q&A. We'll do a 10-minute Q&A. The stream is coming along nicely in terms of timing. Clapback Cinema, I want to agree with you on that. That's a great point. I want to be clear on this. Well, I thought Peacemaker Season 1 was highly offensive, which is why I've never watched it. I had gotten the scripts in advance, and I did check them with the show. They were accurate. I got early drafts, so there were some changes. But I just felt the first season was, let's just say before Peacemaker became a better person, I found him wildly offensive. So I just didn't want to watch a show like that. But I have to say, I agree that Peacemaker Season 2, for what it is a good show. I did come to really like those characters. But I don't think that there's any money there. That's one of my favorite lines from the Ballad of, or Inside Llewyn Davis, whatever that movie is. Remember, it's the movie that put Oscar Isaac on the map. And he's like this really heartfelt folk singer, right? And he goes and he has this meeting. I think it was F. Murray Abraham. And he has this meeting with F. Murray Abraham, and he plays him his music. And the guy says to him, he goes, that's beautiful, but I just don't see any money here. And that's entertainment business in a nutshell. If there's no audience for what you're selling, you either have to go home or think of something else to sell. And that's just the way that it is. You can't make people buy something that they're not interested in. So that's very interesting to me. And that's what I would say about Peacemaker. It doesn't mean it's not good. It's the same thing I'd say about Alien Earth, sadly. I'd be like, you really nerfed it, Noah Hawley. And I'll say that about things that I've been really championing, And that's the mark of a good executive. You know, and I think everybody should have somebody like that in their life. Somebody who's honest with them and is like, it's not good. Lloyd, I have no idea what James Gunn's political affiliations are. They seem to lean somewhat liberal, but I think that doesn't mean he can't get along with people who are moderates, you know, who maybe lean in a little bit of a different direction. Hey, JK, I'm glad you got a membership. That's awesome. Let's see here. I'm going back here. I'm going back. I've missed some questions here. All right, so X-Men Superfan says, there's one thing that has wired to me. What does it mean for Creature Commandos? Are they going to Salvation or stay with Argus? I don't know what's happening with Creature Commandos. Someone should ask James Gunn. He'll certainly happily tell you. I was a little disappointed that they didn't show up in live action in Peacemaker, especially since James Gunn has made such a big point about live action and animation characters being able to like pop up in each other's spaces. So I think that was a real missed opportunity. Kim says, I had no expectations for Superman 2025, but left the theater being one of my favorite movies. Peacemaker absolutely delivered with season 2, being a sequel of sorts. I'm glad you're excited, Kim. But you can't deny that Peacemaker isn't charting on Nielsen, at least so far. It's only 4 episodes in, 4 out of 8, so we're halfway through. Still hasn't been able to chart. And that the last season, the season finale was the lowest rated. I mean, there's some review bombing for sure, but you know, it wouldn't be that low if it was really, really getting a lot of support. MM92 says, hi Grace, which studio do you think has made the worst business decisions in recent years? I guess Sony is oddly absent from the conversation, right? Like, I guess I would just say, they're just making so much money in the video game space, but I guess I would say, get back in here, Sony. Come on, come and fight in here. Let's see here. Present Progressive says, what did you think about Wonder Man? Apparently there will be powers at some point. Wonder Man to me seemed like, no, I didn't see any reason to watch it. You know, if you're interested in the larger story that's being told in the MCU. And it felt like it felt not fresh, to be honest with you, because there have been so many kind of stories like that already. You know, the HBO did one about making a movie. The studio just aired, and then there was also a Judd Apatow movie about making a film during the pandemic that came out. So I think this is just material that's been mined a lot already. And I know some people were like, well, everyone loved the studio and it won tons of awards. They did. I mean, I think that it did very well with like certain people, but it wasn't like a ratings or viewership juggernaut, you know? Nintendard says, part of the rewatch crew. Glad I finally caught Alive. Thanks, Nintard. I'm glad you're here. Enter for None says, what's happening with Gunn right now is, in your opinion, what Marvel experienced when they gave Favreau, Robert Downey Jr. free reign over Iron Man 2. Oh, that's an interesting, that's a long callback ago, but I think that's a good comparison. You know, I can't stress enough the importance of oversight. And you should want oversight. I know, you know, especially when you're dealing with something that has to have mass appeal. And then also when you're dealing with so much money. You know, when you're spending so much money, you know, unless you're really good at your job. And there are some people who are. I mean, think how scary that is for some people where the buck does stop with them. But smart people who are that high up, they ask down. They ask for feedback, and they check in, and they really monitor the landscape. And I think that's what makes them really good leaders. You know, I think, you know, James Gunn might have a little bit too much ego to have that seat, you know? I haven't heard anything about Scream 7, Chris, but I am very excited. You know, let's see how it goes. You know, I am curious if the backlash will actually be effective. Andy, Alien Earth hasn't been canceled, but as I said yesterday, the lack of a season 2 announcement at their New York Comic-Con panel is really concerning. That's right, Bunny Librarian. Tough love. You say it with love. And here's another important thing. You always say it in private. That's another really important part. You're not out to embarrass anybody. You know, you pull them aside and you do them a favor. Astronomy. I'm very excited for Wicked for Good's ticket sales. It's really incredible. Maybe it will make $1 billion. I'm very excited. Fahad says, do you think Doomsday will be delayed again just to be get better premium screens, especially since it's fighting with Dune. I think Dune will move. I wouldn't bet against Avengers Doomsday. I think there's a very strong chance that will deliver, at least on spectacle. And Disney's very aggressive. I've never seen Disney not get their premium screens. I think Dune will move. Oh, Lionsgate for making bad decisions. I don't even really think of them as a studio, but you're right. I think Lionsgate obviously has made some bad choices. Thank you, Arctic Primal. I saw that a couple of people pointed out that Netflix stops doing the all-time most watched after 91 days, which is why the K-pop Demon Hunters number has not been updated. They should start a new chart for all time, because I think that I would be interested in that. Swifty. Thank you. I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm honored I'm your favorite YouTuber. I'm glad you got to say hi. Let's see. X-Men Superfan says, what do you think will be the test of fire for the DCU? Green Lanterns and Supergirl, or how they handle big guys like Wonder Woman and Batman? Oh, I gotta tell you, this Lanterns movie couldn't be the Lanterns show couldn't be more important right now, because they need to get back to a positive footing. So I think that Lanterns is, and I, by the way, have tremendous faith in Lanterns. And I will say, to James Gunn's credit, he put that show together. And that will go a long way to proving that he can run a studio, maybe. You know, he's probably like, let me show some of these episodes to the Ellisons, baby. You know, like maybe, I'll be very curious to see what it looks like. He'll be doing less interviews, hopefully, because they'll be hopefully interviewing the people who actually made that show. That could be a really exciting time and give a lot of validation to Gunn. David says, will you be reviewing Welcome to Derry? Not only will I be reviewing it, but I will be covering it week to week, at least out of the gate. I'm very excited about that show. Let's see. That's all I can say. I'm under strict embargo. All right. So Brandon says, Nielsen ratings can be important, but with how the backside of business, do we know if Warner Brothers is making enough money for the cost of Gunn's products? Well, I'm not sure what you're saying, because the ratings are poor. So ratings are extremely important. You know, I mean, I guess Peacemaker is a really inexpensive show. In my opinion, too inexpensive for what Gunn wants to do with it. I mean, a lot of the things didn't hit with the finale because they were just so freaking cheap. You were like, good Lord, you couldn't have gotten a couple extra dollars to make that sign look a little better? Like, oh my God. And as some of you said, just put a freaking tint on the other Salvation Planet. Why does it just look like it just looks like a field? And that's to save money and having to shoot on Salvation down the line, which is ridiculous. Faye says, did you see the Vampire Lestat trailer and Akasha casting? Thoughts on this? I'm so excited. I'm very excited. I've said before that I think Sam Reed is his Lestat is the new Homelander. But we'll see if they can realize that potential. That's right, Mexican Nacho. None should want to be the next Patty Jenkins. She really torpedoed her career, boy. John Thrasher says, I know you've pulled back on scoops, but do you still hear scoops that you don't make it online? Of course I do. Of course. But I would be horribly ruining films and getting studios extremely upset with me. You know, I'm not an anonymous scooper. When I give a scoop, that's the other problem with scooping. And I've seen some other people talk about this. You rarely get credit for the scoops that you get right. People, like, I've often had people send me an article with the scoop in it beforehand saying, what do you think of this? And I'm like, I'm the source of the article. And so there's a tremendous risk and very little gain. So that's another reason I've stepped back from scooping. But oh yeah, I hear scoops all the time, you know? Well, let's see. Mr. Real Shane says, which is your favorite Diane Keaton movie? I felt so bad about Apple's disrespect for Diane Keaton yesterday when doing Movie Math that I watched Something's Gotta Give last night. And I had a fun time with it. She did a really nice job. It's kind of hard to believe that she's actually gone. Elise, Supergirl is very important. But it's a long ways away. You know, they need to change the conversation like yesterday, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if a Lanterns trailer comes out pretty soon, in fact, to just get people to stop talking about Peacemaker. Timothy, I think Superman made money. I mean, I don't want to say anything else about it. I don't want to say anything bad about. I don't like to comment on other people in my space. You know, I maintain the position. I don't think Superman made a ton of money, but I think it made some money. And theatrical. So that means everything it's making down the line on digital, etc., is extra. I'm glad you're enjoying the topics, Johan. Let's see here. Eric Kari says, Grace, what do you think about the new Tommy Maximoff? I think it's weird. They played lovers in a play. But I'm very excited to see Tommy finally brought to... I just want Wiccan to come back. You know, it's interesting. Tommy isn't a big character in the comics. I think he has his fans. You know, I think, you know, that's always been, you know, he has, you know, people are fans of Tommy, but he's nothing to the level of Wiccan. So let's see if the MCU can maybe make him a little bit more popular. Danny, I'm not sure who should be the... I don't know. I feel sad that anybody has to buy Warner Brothers. I feel that Warner Brothers is an iconic studio, and it's weird that it would not be buying someone else. That's what I guess I wish. I wish Warner Brothers was buying Paramount. And, you know, it's sad enough what happened to 20th Century Fox. And it's really sad. You know, Warner Brothers is one of the original movie studios. And it's just very sad. But there's nothing I can do about it. It's like I would be like shouting at a cloud, you know? I mean, it's just, there's nothing that can be done about it. Thanks, Apple. All right, let's see here. J. Jonah Jameson says, Lanterns will struggle to turn for turning Hal Jordan into a veteran supporting character. Well, maybe they're equal. I mean, I can only hope that they're equals on that show, or that will be an issue for the show. RPW agrees with me about Warner Brothers being absorbed. My pleasure, Bubbles. I'm really glad you feel that way. Oh, let's see here. X-Men Superfan says, would you think Amelia Harcourt would join well-written female characters written by Gunn, like The Bride, Lois, and... Yes, I do, actually. I told you. I couldn't believe it. I came to really like not only Amelia Harcourt as a character, but Jennifer Holland's performance in the role. I mean, I keep telling you, James Gunn should be like, somebody, please, you got to put my wife in something else so it doesn't look like I'm the only one hiring her. And I have to say, I think she's actually somewhat talented. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say she's really talented, but I think she's a capable actress. And I've come to really like Harcourt. I mean, the fact that I said in my Peacemaker season finale coverage that I thought that they should make Amelia Harcourt Sacha Bordeaux in the DCU is tremendous praise from me, because Sacha Bordeaux is one of my favorite characters. So the fact that I said that, I couldn't have said a nicer compliment about the, Amelia Harcourt and Jennifer Holland's performance in the role. I mean, I was like negative in terms of how I felt about her, and I thought that the way the role was written and her performance was so good over season 2 that I went into not just neutral, but positive. So that's incredible. And I do think that James Gunn did a wonderful job with Lois Lane. Wonderful. I just said that I think the new Lestat trailer looks great, and I'm very curious to see how it performs, because it's not going to be on Netflix. So there's a real paywall to get into that. Let's see here. McReal Shane, as I said before, I had to move locations because they're doing construction nearby where I usually film. They're tearing a building down, and it's going to be really loud for like a couple of months, and so I had to move. And then Lima says, since it's looking like a done deal, do you think there is somewhere else that should be someone else to be trying to get Warner Brothers? I would love to see Universal. I would love to see Universal take them, because Universal can use that IP so well. But I think that I'm telling you, I feel that the Ellisons invested a lot of money in Paramount, and they feel that they're not going to get their value unless they quickly grow the company. And they can only do that by purchasing Warner Brothers. So I think that they aggressively want Warner Brothers. And maybe that's why they're willing to buy all of Warner Brothers before there are any other competitors at the lower rate. And so maybe they're paying for first dibs, and that's very possible considering how much money they have. But that's why I think the Ellisons want it. I don't think their Paramount will be as successful if they don't get it. It is crucial to the success of their company their studio moving forward. I would say it's make or break. And so they will make this deal happen. Let's see here. They're not going to split it up, Ubo. They're going to buy the whole thing. And then X-Men Superfan says, I forgot to ask about Adebayo. Do you think she was well written? No, I don't. I think Danielle Brooks is like just a tower of personality. She's just leaps off the screen. But I don't think she's as well written. Faces, do you think Spider-Man Brand New Day will make a Billy? I have to see more about it. Probably yes. And then Robinzilla says, any announcements out of New York Comic Con that you're excited about? I liked the Tommy announcement. I'm very excited that Mortal Kombat 3 is already a thing. There weren't that many announcements. You know, I'm excited for like the X-Men 97 season 2 has like kind of a release date. I'm excited about that. And then Pattinson can save the DCEU. I hope the Batman 2 is good. It better be good after how long we had to wait for this. And then Deandra says, after decades of failed Warner Brothers mergers and acquisitions, it would be nice to see Warner Brothers stand on its own. It would be nice, but that's not going to happen, which is sad. It's kind of sad. Oh, Andy, last season of Daredevil was so bad. I don't even know if I'm going to cover it. It was just really bad. Oase, you just got employed. Congratulations. Woohoo. All right, time to go. Let me do some shout-outs, because I haven't done shout-outs in a while, and I know people like shout-outs. That's right. Oh, Danny just asked for shout-outs. So, where are you? What are you doing? Oh, look at Kim, #1 on the leaderboard. Who are the top fans? Kim is #1, Obu is #2, and Swifty is #3. Oh, that's great. All right, so Present Progressive is writing from my autumn holidays in Warsaw. Wow, I love the global feel. I think that's so great. Ubo, #1 right now, is in Australia. Wow, look, the leaderboard is competitive. Rufinos is at the law school library. Oh, Juan loves the shout-outs. I'm glad I'm doing them. Fahad is about to have dinner with the family in Qatar. I want to make sure. Qatar. I think it's Qatar. That's awesome. Oh, I love the globe. I love talking to people all over the world. Let's see here. Danny's in Guatemala. Always nice to see you. Oh, Austria. Sorry, Obu. Austria. Let's see here. Jesse's in San Jose, about to get McGriddles. Oh, I'm about to go get some lunch. Let's see here. Erica says, hi from Mexico on a day off from work. Hola. VTV Psycho is chilling on a train right now. Choo choo. I love your train emoji. Is it Thanksgiving in Canada, Riley? Your Thanksgiving's very early if it is. Oh, look, Hyper's in England. I had such a good time in England over the holidays. In Kent. Oh, look, Salmon Hotspots in Barcelona or Barcelona. Look, Norwegian Kryptonian is in Norway, as expected. I love the Norway Pavilion at Disney World. It's one of my favorite places. Desert Night is drinking tea in Dubai. Let's see here. Clayton Johnson is having some pizza. I had pizza last night while I watched that Diane Keaton movie. Oasis, listening to the life of a showgirl while simultaneously listening to my favorite YouTuber and making burgers in Nottingham, and you just got a job. Oasis, you are celebrating, and I am honored to be a part of that celebration. Let's see here. It is Thanksgiving in Canada. That's nuts. That's crazy. Ben, bonjour, Ben in France. I always love seeing you. I love France as well. Haven't been there in a while, but I loved going there. Let's see here. Real Jose says, hello from the Philippines at 2 a.m. Watching your stream while working. I will be jogging. Oh, are you going to jog after this? Is it safe to jog that early in the morning? Please be careful. Oh, a heart for you too. Enter for none. Innovative David. Somebody had too good a time at Pride weekend, right? Tammy says, chilling in Ocean City. Grace and mac cheese. Life is good. I'm honored to be paired up with mac and cheese. I'm a big mac and cheese fan. I should visit Europe more often, but it is expensive. Let's see here. Oh, look. Michael is going to a pickleball tournament. Good luck indeed, Michael. I'm so glad you could join the stream today. And then Just Blaze Disney is playing the new Ghost of Yote video game while watching the stream. I know a number of you were excited about that game. And then Astronomy is watching from Texas while doing homework, also trying to figure out eye doctor appointments since my left eye is hyperoptic. Oh, no, and you need eye surgery? Oh, good luck. My eye drops are working pretty good. Oh, Obu, you're a flight attendant? Thank you. Oh, I might take you up on that. Newswriter says, I'm shouting out myself as this is my first live stream with your Ruby icon. Oh, happy anniversary to us. And then Cam says, not sure if a question you'd feel comfortable answering. Do I enjoy any other YouTube channels? I like honest trailers, and I like how it should have ended. Those are really fun for me. I have to be careful because in my own space, it's like doing work, you know? Like, for instance, it's hard for me to rewatch Marvel and DC movies because I'm like, must be paying attention for work, you know? So I can't really kind of just turn my brain off and relax. So, I try to make sure when I'm not doing my work that I decompress. Oh, Elise also had eye surgery. Oh my goodness, everyone's peepers. Look after your peepers, everybody. And then Mando Mouse is watching from UC Berkeley. Oh, that's great. That's a great school. All right, everybody. I had a lovely time with you today. There will be more live streams this week, I promise. I super promise. So thank you so much for your patience. I had a great time talking about this with you, and I shall see you very soon. And, of course, other videos as well. Oh, no, Brandon also has eye surgery. My goodness, it's an epidemic. All right, everybody. Bye-bye. See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.